So, what do you do with your dead or dying Etsy store? This is something that no one wants to talk about, the dark, dirty world of dead and dying Etsy stores. On YouTube, everyone just wants to talk about making $10,000 a month and endless sales coming into your store. Of course, that's pie in the sky. It's not realistic. I deal with realism on my channel, as you know, and dead and dying stores is part of the realism and fact of selling on Etsy. So we're going to deal with what to do with dead and dying Etsy stores. And the very first thing I need you to understand is that every Etsy store is an asset. Okay, so no matter how bad the situation with the store, it's an asset because you never know when you might not be able to sell on Etsy again. You could get suspended, you could be connected to another store that was suspended, and you can go from having an Etsy presence to not having an Etsy presence. And when you don't have an Etsy store and Etsy suspend you, it's very, very difficult to get onto the platform. So let's recognize that every store is an asset. The next thing we need to do here, it's the most obvious thing, we need to define what a dead and dying Etsy store is. Now, everyone will have different ideas about this. The definition I'm going to give you is based on 8 years experience helping thousands of Etsy sellers with their Etsy stores. So let's get into my definition, and then you can work out where you are amongst all this and whether indeed you have a dead or dying Etsy store. And then later I'm going to tell you what to do about it, how we can actually make changes here that are going to turn around this problematic store. Let's get into it. Right then, so Etsy dead stores. I think there's probably between 500,000 and 1 million dead stores on Etsy. A lot of these would have been created during the COVID pandemic, and now Etsy has loads of these stores sitting, doing nothing, they're not selling anything, and the people who own them, they're not even bothered about doing anything about it. However, there's plenty of people out there with dead and dying Etsy stores that are desperate to do something about it. So let's first understand what my definition of a dead store is, and then you can work out where you are in this definition. So, first of all, easy, if you've opened a store 2022, 2021, and it's sat there with no sales, so over 1 year old with no sales, and you created the store recently in the last 2 years, that's a dead store, clearly. Okay, so it's dead and you can do something with this store. It's better to try and do something with the store because it's an asset. Later, if it doesn't work, you can just open a new store. And I tell people all the time, if people are in business, time is money. And, a lot of people don't want to spend that time trying an existing store and then opening a new one. But if you're in a position where you recognize it's an asset and you have time, it's good to work on the existing store and see if you can revive it. So that's easy example number one. Over a year old, newish store, no sales, that's dead. Second example, now this is more difficult and lots of sellers fall into this category. This is where you have a store that used to make sales but now doesn't. And you might have 500 sales, 1,000, 2,000 sales. Some of these stores, I work with clients like this all the time. So they used to make great sales back in 2014 or 2016, 17, something like that. But then they let the store, for various reasons, degrade over time. And it went from sort of 3 sales a day, 5 sales a day, 10 sales a day. Now it's doing 1 sale a month or 2 sales a month. And this would also be a dying store or almost dead because it's not selling. It used to do, let's say it used to do $2,000 a month 3 or 4 years ago, but now it's doing $30 or $40 a month. In essence, this store is dead. Yes, the sales are still trickling in. If you have a store like this, it is probably dying or dead. Get into my comments if you want to know. If you want me to help you and help you identify if this store is indeed dead, you can tell me your stats in the comments and I'll let you know. So this is a bigger asset. If you've got a store like this, you've got 200 sales, 500 sales, 1,000 sales, maybe 2,000, maybe 5,000 sales, and it's been open years and now it's dead because you didn't do anything with the store for whatever reason. This is a big, big asset. And if you want to use Etsy, you should definitely try and revive and reinvigorate this store because you have history on Etsy to work with. So all those sales that you made, all the reviews that you got, everything you did is a plus, it's a positive. So what I'm going to get into now, this is for the stores that are existing, that have died, that I just explained, and the newer stores earlier. I'm going to get into a basic program on how you revive and sort these stores out. I can't guarantee it will work. Every case is different, but these are solid steps to take to try and revive stores before you decide to open a new one, if that circumstance fits you. Let's get into the answers. So the first thing and most important thing is to understand and recognize that your store is sitting there with dead items in it. So as well as having a dead or almost dead, dying store, your listings inside the store that don't sell are also dead. So they are of no use anymore if they've been sat in your store for over a year, they're not working, they're not selling. What you have to do is have a listing management plan. So you've got to cycle out the dead listings and replace them with new ones, okay? And you need to do this slowly, but not so slowly as I advise for listing one item per day when you're building and growing an Etsy store. You don't have to go that slow. If you've only got 20 items in the store, it's not going to take very long anyway to take the listings out. But let's say you had 100 listings in the store. You could quite easily go at 3, 4, 5 listings a day, cycling those dead listings out and bringing new listings in. Remember, this is a dead and dying store. It's not subject to the same advice that I give for building and growing new stores, which is slow and steady, list one item per day. There's so many reasons why I tell you guys to do that. I go on and on about it. It's so important. If the store's dead and dying, well, it's dead and dying. You know, you've got to take drastic action to start turning the store around. So you can change one item a day, 2, 3 items a day, up to 5 items a day, depending on the size of the store. So don't go changing 5 items a day if it's a tiny store and you've only got 10 items in it. Just go slowly. Just do 2 a day. Just go slowly and get it done over 5 days. But if the store's got 400 items in it and you've got a few hundred or a couple of thousand sales, you can move much more quickly. Again, if you want to know about your individual case, get into my comments, give me the stats, how many sales you've got, how many items you've got, when the sales dried up, and I can advise you based on your situation. But overall, the picture is clear. If it's a small store, just remove a couple of listings a day. If you've got 400, 500 items and hundreds or thousands of sales, but the store doesn't work anymore, you can move more quickly. You can move more quickly because you've got more quality score and visibility tied up in your store. It allows you to move more quickly. And you need to move more quickly. You can't take 400 days to remove 400 items. That's crazy. You need to move at 3, 4, 5 items a day to get these items out of the store and get cycling and start bringing new inventory in. Which, if I look at my notes, leads me to probably the most critical part of turning around a dead store, and that is what you're selling. So you can't do all this work and cycling inventory and refreshing the store without having a plan on what to sell, because obviously what was selling didn't sell or it never sold in the first place. So let's talk about what you're going to bring in to your revived Etsy store next. So you've identified you've got a dead store or a dying store and you need to do something about it. Remember, every store is an asset. You never know when you might not be able to sell on Etsy. So once you've recognized it's dead, you've looked at your situation, how big the store is, how many items, how many sales, you've identified your personal situation. Now you need to come up with an inventory plan. So we've talked about moving inventory out of your store, bringing inventory into your store, but you've got to sell something that people want to buy. So you've got to make a concrete decision, and I talk about this all the time, about your niche and sub-niche set. You've got to do this. I see some people on YouTube, oh, you don't need to do this. Oh, of course you do. You've got to have a message in your products that you give to Etsy and the customers about what you do. If Etsy doesn't know what you do and you do what I would call a general gift store, it's just not going to work. It's not going to work. And you're going to end up with a big store with no sales. Pick a niche and solid sub-niche sets. So for example, I talk about these all the time, but I'll give you an example. Weddings could be your niche, and your sub-niche sets inside weddings might be wedding day, anniversary, wedding receptions, engagements, you see, parties, all these things, they would be your sub-niche sets, and you build and grow your new store or revived store in your sub-niche sets. You've got to have a clear path, clear plan of action, pricing. Make sure that lots of your prices are $50 and under, so 20 to 50 is always good for Etsy. Look at stores that are doing thousands of sales. The pricing is all 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 50, and so on. It's an easy price point to buy at. There's not much thinking involved there to make those purchases. And just make sure you've got a plan to cycle out all your inventory and grow as well. Okay, so if you've got 20 items in your store, you can cycle them out, but that's not the end of it. Now you've got to grow. And remember, I always say to get to 100 items. And people say, oh, you don't need to get to 100 items, Nick. I've got 20 and I've got $1 million in sales. No, that is a massive exception to the rule. Most stores with low inventory don't have very many sales or none. Bigger stores tend to do much better. So when I talk about getting to 100 items, there's probably 5 or 6 reasons why I tell you to do this. And I've covered this in many videos, but concentrate on getting to that 100 items. If you're a big store, you've got 400 items, well, all the dead items still need to be cycled out, and I would still advise you grow. So still put 10 or 20% growth on your existing inventory number. You've got to put your best foot forward with Etsy and show not that you're just removing stuff that's not working and you're targeting a niche and sub-niche set, but grow as well. Push into Etsy more. So this is absolutely critical. Niche and sub-niche set. Let's now get to the final point that's going to help you start to make sales in your revived store. Right. The final point to reviving dead and dying Etsy stores. Most sellers that I talk to hate this. They don't like doing it, but you've got to do it. It's photography and video. Okay? In 2023, there's no excuse for not having decent photography and video. If you want to revive a store and get it going, you've done all the other work, but you get to photography and video and your photography video is average or poor, it's just going to ruin the whole experience for customers and lower your sales rate, lower your conversion rate. So make sure your photography and video is of a decent standard. It doesn't have to be the absolute best, but you've got to be above average. You have to be above average. So products front and center, decent lighting, no sun in the image, no shadows. Make sure the context of your photo is good. Your product stands out against the background. It's not confusing. You don't have loads of props in the photo. All this stuff just ruins conversion rate. Keep it on brand, simple, effective, and focused. Video. It's 2023. Sorry guys, there's no excuse not to offer video. Even if you do POD, there's plenty of companies out there now who already do video mock-ups, and there's plenty of places that you can go to like Fiverr and Upwork where you can hire people to do the mock-ups for you if you can't find what you need. There's just no excuse for it, and you can also take videos yourself. So often I say to people who do digital prints, for example, it's quite hard to get decent mock-ups. Well, do it yourself. Get a print, get a place in a room in your house or somewhere you can do photos, print them out and do the videos yourself. This is what customers want. It's what you and I want if we're looking for a product. We want to see a video of the product, don't we? So we get a better idea of what we're buying. Photography and video is essential to turning around these dead and failing Etsy stores. And all of this takes time and it's effort. This is months of work. For some stores, weeks for others, but months if you've got a store that used to be established. It's going to take time. You need to think about that. Are you willing to put in the commitment to turn this store around? Okay, get into my comments on this. Let me know what you think. Give me some stats if you want me to tell you if your store's dead or not. And there's no excuse not to work with me if you need help. I do 5-minute mini consultations. They're $25. That's cheap as chips. Everyone else wants to charge you $2,500 for a course or $6,000. It's all ridiculous. Talk to me. I know what I'm talking about. I help thousands of people, really help thousands of people. Not Mickey Mouse YouTube chat. I really help thousands of people build and grow Etsy businesses. I've been doing it for 8 years. Get in touch. Let's work together. Let's fix your store problems. Cheers, everyone. See you in the next video.